Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of DoubleDM podcast, where we today discuss horror and horror vibes and playing a horror campaign, what that entails, and a whole lot more. And we have a guest for that today. Member of the DoubleDM team, Elli, will be joining us after this recap, as with every normal guest episode. So, first and foremost, Niels, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. To look forward to a couple of D&D sessions or TTRPG sessions, and just enjoying the weather, enjoying my time.
Yeah.
But how about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing so and so, you could say.
Why is that?
This is a long story. So, first of all, there was a long break we had in Kendo. You could call it a summer break. It wasn't necessarily planned. So, then also the week when we were supposed to start again, I wasn't able to make it. So, I had 4 weeks of break from Kendo, which was sad. But then I finally got back to Kendo yesterday. And damn, was I out of shape and exhausted even beforehand. But it was a fun training session, even though my last fight against my sensei was terrible. Like, we had 1, 2, 3 normal strike exchanges, you could say, where we both attacked and either one of us scored. So that was normal. After that, through error on my side and also my sensei's side, but it happens, right? It's a sports injury, more or less. He somehow managed to get his sword under my armor and stab me in the first rib.
Yikes.
Right here, right below my throat.
That's not very comfortable.
Yeah. So that's that. Yes, it's painful. For those that I want to ask, yes.
Yeah, okay. I get that.
Happens, I guess. Isn't really, it's not what you want to happen, but it happens. So yeah, that was basically the ending of the training session. It was also the normal ending of the training session, but happens.
Something similar happened to me when I was training in Kung Fu. I got a kick or didn't block or didn't parry or whatever, right? It just happened in a sparring match that I got kicked into or in my short rib. That was also, it took the wind out of me for a good time. But not as bad as being stabbed, I suppose.
Again, this is something that happens. It's sports. It's a sports injury. It happens. And I've been doing Kendo for 6 years at this point. This is really the first big injury I got from training. So it just happens.
Yeah.
One in the 100,000 strikes goes bad and is painful.
Yeah.
Or can happen. So that's that. But aside from injuries that might impede on my normal life, I'm looking forward to TTRPG sessions as well. And had also a few fun ones.
Tell me about them. What sessions did you have, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, I had 2 sessions as every week, right? One on Tuesday, one on Thursday. Thursday last week, Tuesday this week. Tuesday this week was Tyranny of Dragons. My players are still looking to break the pact. Didn't finish that because they took their good time at a few of the challenges on this holy journey that I prepared for them. Where I thought, okay, this is gonna take a bit of time, but it's not gonna take that long, so we can finish that pact breaking this session. Well, no, they obviously had to discuss everything, and it took them 2 hours to do the first challenge of 3. So, and then they realized, maybe we should have prepared for this journey. I thought it would be easy to just walk up to a goddess's domain and ask her, right? I told them explicitly as the game master, this is gonna be hard. You guys have to prepare for this. So that's that. And also on Thursday last week, we had a Dark Eye session where we still also haven't finished our quest to stop the cult, you could say. So
All right.
But looking forward to that session today, because I think we will finish today. I firmly believe we finished today, because we have gotten some very good clues for the riddle that we're supposed to solve to basically realize what we have to do. And then, we do that.
Perfect. So
we just have to solve a riddle. It isn't hard. Probably not, right?
Just solve a riddle.
Yeah, it can't be hard. Can't be hard.
Most definitely not.
Let's hope that we finish that. Or I will tell you all next week that we didn't.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's that. So tell me about your sessions that you're looking forward to or have had.
I had one on Tuesday, which didn't got canceled. That's a good thing, right?
That's a good sign.
Yeah, we finally finished the combat that we were cut short of last time we played this campaign, where our bag of holding with all our magic shit and about enough money to raise a small army got stolen.
Yeah.
But we got that back with, and we retrieved our legendary swords that were in there, which is pretty important to stabilize our position that we are in. And yeah, it was a tough fight. But yeah, we played to our advantages. We basically used the Obi-Wan strategy and got the high ground and used that. And yeah, they underestimated our power. Let's say it like that.
Okay.
But yeah, and we in that session we got introduced to a new character a new player that joined us in there on that day. And yeah, looking forward to character introductions next time, because the combat took a while for 7 players and 10 antagonists. That may take a while, the combat. So yeah, but yeah, next time character introductions. Some intense role play, since we saved the daughter of basically the king of that region the session before last session. Yeah, and let's just see what happens in regards to that. I'm kind of intrigued.
Interesting.
And then I have a session coming up on Sunday, which I can talk all about, because this episode is just gonna release right after we played that session. So, it's a one-shot that I got asked to run for a couple of friends, because we haven't played in that group. We haven't played TTRPGs in that group for quite some time now. Yeah, I got asked to do something with dragons, because, dragons are awesome.
Dragons. The only thing dragons is gonna be that we're playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, but I said to my players that we are gonna start at character level 15, so I can try out some interesting and fun stat blocks that I want to use. But I'm excited to see how this goes, because I've never played a stat block beyond challenge rating 16, I think. So I'm excited to see how these mythic actions and basically the double HP pool and phase 2 of a boss fight gets handled by as well as me and my players. I'm looking forward to that. Can't wait. And I will tell you how it went. Yeah, but that's basically all D&D for me.
That's not true.
That's not true.
That's not true. You have a session tomorrow, theoretically.
Theoretically, yeah. Let's hope.
Yeah, theoretically you have a session tomorrow. So
yeah.
Also, I just remembered something. Yesterday, before Kendo practice, because Kendo is a sport for nerds. Period. Right? It's not only just because it's shown in a lot of anime, because anime is from Japan and Kendo is a Japanese sport, but also just because it's a great sport for people of every age, and also it's just fucking cool to hit each other with swords. So get out of here with that soccer bullshit. Or football. Ugh. No, but we have a few people at Kendo that play D&D, and also a few people that want to start playing D&D. So there are 2 things. One, I basically got asked to run a D&D one-shot for the newbies at the Kendo course.
Okay.
That might be interested. When the D&D movie came out, there was this question of how will this influence the TTRPG space or the D&D space, more precisely, right? And well, this is the big influence, right? This person is a big movie nerd. He's also very busy, but he watched the movie and said, oh no matter how busy I am, I have to play D&D at least once in my life. And I know these people that play D&D, so let's ask them, right? And basically now we have like 3 to 4 people from that Kendo course that have never played interested in playing.
Okay.
All because the movie came out, the new Baldur's Gate is out, right? There's a lot of hype around the D&D brand right now, even though Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are trying their best to burn the brand in every hellfire you can imagine.
Yep.
But there are people a lot interested in tabletop role-playing, more so because it gets pushed more and more into the mainstream.
And I mean, TTRPGs are just amazing. So
yeah, no, they are. And the fun thing is, right, on the ride home from the training, right, I talked with a few people, and they all had different expectations, right, and all different kind of notions of what this is about, how it works, and right, because they have never played before, they've never known anything. But it was interesting, right, to once again, as someone that has been doing this for 10 years now rather regularly, seeing people interested in the hobby that basically, right, I don't want to say I mastered, but I'm doing a podcast with 135 episodes about it. So I think I can say I kind of mastered the hobby a bit, at least for me. So it's kind of cool. But also something way more cool is I got invited to a level 20 D&D one-shot.
Oh, okay.
By one of the other people that plays D&D at Kendo, who was asked to run a Kafka D&D one-shot.
Okay.
You all get basically the same quest, amass 1 million gold pieces, but at the end you're gonna fail and you're gonna sacrifice everything there is for it, right?
Okay.
You will sacrifice your strength score, your constitution, right? Every mechanical thing and everything that makes your character. And at the end, it's still not enough. That's the idea, right?
All right.
And I can already hear people saying, D&D isn't made for that, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I know. I don't give a fuck. It sounds like a fun, cool art project even. So don't fucking tell me that the game is not for it, because at the end of the day, I just want to see what happens. And I don't care if we do it in D&D or not. If it would be a campaign, I would probably say, can we use a different system? But for one shot, for 4 or 5 hours, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I think especially for one shots, it's not that important. The choice of system isn't as important as for a longer campaign.
I mean, also the thing is, right, this is played with people that might not have necessarily the big grasp on TTRPGs as a whole, right? This is not necessarily people that play D&D usually, I've been told, except for the GM. So if they just want to play D&D, right, I don't give a fuck where they start or how they want to do it. I just want to have fun and have this idea become reality, because it sounds so fucking
It sounds fucking amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds like a fun idea and a fun session to be had.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm the type of person, because I was basically managed, my expectations were very heavily managed by this GM that asked me going, this is not gonna be fun for anyone. That's gonna be terrible and we will all hate ourselves. And you will throw dice at me. And I'm like, maybe. At the same time, I'm the type of person that just enjoys this meta shit. I don't see a problem with it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And if that ever happens and how that happens, I will gladly talk about it on this podcast, obviously, for people. People deserve to know what happens.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, that's everything that happened in my week based on TTRPGs. Basically, everything happened on Wednesday. Yeah, I have nothing else to discuss.
Me neither.
So we can and should just jump into our discussion with Elli from the DoubleDM team to discuss horror in TTRPGs. Hey listener, how are you enjoying the show so far? Tell us about it in whatever way you see fit. Go to our social media pages and add us or DM us about your favorite episode of the show. We would love to hear from you on what impact our show might have had on your home games. Or you could review us on your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice message with a 5-star review. And if you want to go above and beyond, bring a friend into the fold. Tell them about our show and refer us to them so they can get a piece of the pie as well. Thank you for listening to DoubleDM and joining us on this incredible journey.
And with that, welcome back. And now we have our guest with us, Elli. So please, Elli, introduce yourselves. Who are you? What are you doing? How did you get into TTRPGs? All the fun stuff.
What are you?
What
doing,
are you?
Obviously, not what are you?
Hi, I am Elli. What am I? Yes. Well, first and foremost, a friend to the two of you, I would presume. And second of all, also a fellow TTRPG player and game master occasionally. I've gotten into TTRPGs a long time ago. I would lie if I would tell you like an exact date or something, or even a year, for I am not sure. I would assume somewhere around 2016, 17 perhaps. Me and my friends from school back then were playing like the Black Eye occasionally. I did not know what the hell was going on at any given time. I had that character sheet and somebody told me to roll some dice and I did. And guys, if you would ask me about the rules of the Black Eye today, I don't know now. I didn't know then. I didn't know in between. I just played it. And then I had a break when that group kind of separated ways for different reasons, quite a lot of different reasons. And eventually, after a year break or so, I kind of stumbled into Dungeons & Dragons, which I hold dear to heart. I am still playing a whole lot of. Very recently, I kind of spread out into a few different TTRPG systems, which was pretty enjoyable. But I do my comfort zones. And having played D&D, I also found my favorite genre of D&D, which is obviously fantasy. But within that fantasy genre, I've came to love any kind of horror. And any person who has played a lot of D&D and is interested and might have heard of Curse of Strahd, which is my probably favorite campaign to run and play in. I have run it several times, never completed it because scheduling is terrible. I have it completed on my computer, all the prep, just need a group to run it for that doesn't crumble apart. Yeah, that is the Elli construct. That is glad to be here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can only echo the statement of never having really finished anything besides one campaign ever.
Then you're one campaign ahead of me.
Jeez.
Oh, no, wait, it's two.
Then you're two
Because
campaigns
you
ahead of me.
played in my... Wait, did you play? Yes, you played in my Witcher campaign.
Oh, then I finished one. Hey!
I also finished one.
It's nearly 100 episodes ago that we finished that, by the way.
Yeah, true.
Woo, for you. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I appreciate y'all.
So, as people might have already guessed, you're not one of our usual guests. That is from the random TTRPG content creation scene that we've met on Twitter or something. We've actually known each other through, offline means more or less, or online, but not in this, not content creation means.
Yeah.
Through the online space.
Yeah, exactly. It's you know people and people know people, and sometimes you get to know the people know, and
you know the people as well.
Yeah, exactly. And very weird online friendships are blossoming. If I recall correctly, I was first kind of hanging out with Niels a whole lot, and I was prepping Curse of Strahd for Niels back then, and I came into
not only
contact,
for me, okay?
Yeah,
not only for me.
Only for Niels.
One-on-one Curse of Strahd. Let's go.
That wouldn't have crumbled as fast as the other groups did.
Likely. And I came into contact with Emil then, because I knew he was a DM himself, and I needed someone to talk about all the wicked stuff I had planned, and I also needed some additional opinions on some stuff I planned, some balancing. And so we came into contact and we talked a lot about, preparation as a dungeon master or game master, horror, what creates horror. If I am not mistaken, that is what I am here to talk about mainly. How to do horror.
It's just the first time we ever privately talked.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it was the first time that we basically privately talked with each other. So having no recollection of that conversation, obviously, because it was 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago at this point.
I'd say close to 2, likely, yeah.
Something along the lines of January 2021 or something, was it? Could be.
I am being honest. I have no freaking clue.
Yeah.
I don't know shit.
But to basically pick up that conversation, you already talked about Curse of Strahd and fantasy horror. So let me ask you something that is very important that DoubleDMs shows every single week. First, we need to set a baseline. So what is fantasy horror for you?
Ooh, for me personally, it is the things that create the spook, but taking the reality out of it. I mean, obviously there is very widely known elements of horror, slasher stuff, or there are this big spectrum of different kinds of horror. And many of them are really real, body horror is something that is very well known, even in modern horror movies that have nothing to do with fantasy. And for fantasy horror, it's taking elements that are well known in any kind of horror scenario and adding some fling of fantasy to it, taking out the reality of it, without taking out what scares. That is what fantasy horror is for me. It is the uncomfortable feeling of impending doom, not knowing where it's coming from, what it's causing it, but knowing that you have to do something to stop it or try to. And while keeping all the fantasy elements, like magic, different fantasy lineages, all these things, yeah.
Okay.
Also, all the fantasy monsters can improve horror greatly because there's like no limitation to what kinds of horrors you can bring upon that universe you're creating.
I have a question. Niels and I have done a horror episode 2 years ago or something for Halloween 2021, I think it was.
Oh, Jesus, I am out of season.
We talked to Sergio from Mayday Roleplay, who has GM'd their Doom to Repeat campaign, which is an actual play that, first of all, is one of my favorites of all time. But it's a modern horror campaign, and it plays in our real world during the pandemic,
right,
with agents from these black suit, black tie organizations like Men in Black or something, but more realistic, have to investigate eldritch horrors and encounter horrors along the way.
Right.
For example, the horrors that I remember explicitly were, for example, zombies. Now, let's be real. Who of you both would be afraid of a zombie IRL?
Well, I suppose it would be rather scary to encounter like a walking corpse, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a walking corpse, right? We can make jokes about it as much as we want because zombies are basically the epitome of basic monster.
Yeah,
But in real life, having a walking corpse...
Yeah, fuck that shit. Nope.
Fuck that shit. But in a fantasy setting, like especially D&D, because Elli talked about Curse of Strahd, let's face it, a zombie has a challenge rating of 1/4.
Yeah.
Or 1.5, they are not scary, even for the most low level of adventurers, really. They can become scary, but they aren't that scary.
That is exactly like the thing about horror. Something does not have to be a threat to be horrific.
Yes.
I'm taking an example of one of the Strahd campaigns I have mastered. They encountered a well, and they were sensing a weird smell from that well. And after some investigation, there were zombies down there. However, I never phrased it as they are zombies. It's like, how many figures do I see down there? And I was like, do you mean like whole figures or body parts? That was like my counter question for it. And they were like, what the frick? Why are there body parts down there?
Yeah.
Like taking a term that you are familiar with and you are not afraid of anymore and twisting it into something that creates friction and scares. That is what horror is about. And that is how I think it should be done. But that is my opinion. Like everybody, I'm sure, has like their own tools to create a horror that fits their players. I just personally prefer to stay away from things that people are used to. And if I use them, twist them in a way that is unexpected.
I think that's also one of the things that Sergio said, right, Niels?
Yeah.
Using the unknown.
Yeah.
Putting explicit meanings to things is gonna destroy somewhat of a horror immersion because as humans, one of the basic instincts we have is being afraid of what we don't know. That's just basic human nature because it is our survival instinct. We don't know this thing, better be careful. That goes for that. What I was talking more about was also that for an adventurer that lives in a world where dragons exist, right? And they are scary, but that where these things are a thing that is rather normal. For the world they exist, right? In our world, there are no dragons.
Right.
So I think there was some talks about maybe T-Rex having wings, which was very exciting.
That was so metal. I was like, oh my God, yes.
As a thing, right? The world is infused with magic. The world is infused with all these fantasy elements, which these fantasy elements to us would be scary already. But to these characters, they still might be scary. Like a tiger would be scary to us, roaming around, but they're normal. And how do you separate that normality from the horror?
I think there's a big difference between scaring characters and scaring players. It obviously depends like on what experience levels your players are on and how proficient they are into getting immersed into a story. Generally, I think anybody would, be startled by finding, just body parts lying around. No matter how normal, like modified zombies or something like that is, we have to keep in mind that the player characters are heroes. They are not the usual people of the world. Any civilian, any commoner would still be scared of a zombie in most cases.
Yeah.
Exactly. When it comes to adventuring parties, I think it's a little bit more tricky because they are supposed to be the heroes. That's like all D&D is about, is making them the heroes and making them extraordinary in most cases. But to bring the horror, you have to make sure that the character is immersed into the story. Of course, something like a zombie. In a fight, they won't do them much harm. It's more of the consequences the characters have to deal with when dealing with the zombies. I mean, they can wipe them out, no problem. But when they walk around and see like a whole village infected with that zombie sickness, for instance, they have to make a moral decision, which can bring horror to players and characters. Do we purge the entire town, or do they, just leave them to themselves and watch as the whole population becomes into, zombies, rotting corpses? That is what brings gravity to those mundane things in the fantasy world, right? It's about creating weight.
And I think you just mentioned with the zombie curse, disease or whatever.
Zombification
and shit. I think you can use even the known things to invoke horror, or at least in my opinion, you can use known things, just depending on how many of these things there are. I think numbers are a big part of invoking horror, or can be a big part in invoking horror. And playing with that knowing thing, coming back a bit about the meta gaming discussion we had, is if your players know what zombies can do, or the thing that you want to use or are using can do, and then proposing a moral quandary. Do we get our goal or achieve our goal but sacrifice something else in return, or the other way around? And I think these are some elements where you can use the known part, or things that are known to the players and the player characters, to still invoke horror or suspense, or fantasy horror suspense combination, just because the players know what these things can or cannot do. I mean, a single zombie for a adventuring party isn't that big of a deal, but 2,000 zombies still are, even for a higher level party.
I think especially with zombies, they have their own genre of horror. Right? Zombie horror is a genre that has been explored a lot because it is part of survival horror. And zombie horror, zombies are just the best antagonists, apparently, because also, right, through other distinctive means that we don't have to talk about, but zombies are just fun, right? Especially because I think they're also, like most things in these games, because you as the GM have the creative power to do so, they are blank slates for you to do whatever you want with them, right? You can take a normal zombie. They're slow. They are a living corpse. They die if you shoot their brains out. Yeah, cool. Okay. So, for example, looking at different zombies, right? We have the Walking Dead zombies. They aren't living corpses. They're theoretically still alive because their brain's still working.
Yeah.
We can take the Left 4 Dead zombies. They're actually a fungus. They are a hive mind. Shooting one won't solve the problem, because then just 3 others will come because they know where you are now. You have a lot of stuff to do. Or you can do a lot of stuff with these blank slates. And I think you can embrace that normality, right? You can tell your players, well, this looks to be like a zombie, but you don't know what kind of zombie. When you're talking to the players, not necessarily the characters, but when you're talking to the players, they can instantly know, okay, this is a zombie, this is a living corpse, blah, blah, blah. But there could still be some kind of catch to them that makes them scary once again. You don't have to make them scary just because they are zombies, right? You'd have the Left 4 Dead bloater zombies that explode when you kill them. Like, that's literally every melee character's nightmare.
Yeah, or just using a same theme and sticking to it, but adding little variations that give some, let's say, spice to it all. Just like you said, using bloater zombies, but sticking still to the zombie theme itself can increase the horror suspense level to a near infinite amount, depending on how much variation you add and how impactful these variations can be. Just because of the way you change or use the basic as a zombie and then add or remove and change little pieces. And then you have just the options to completely change the zombie stat block as it is, but still sticking to the same theme. So they know it's a zombie and undead, but everything else might just change depending on what type of zombie you're encountering.
There's a special discussion here that Niels and I have had countless times on this podcast, but Elli didn't have the time to weigh in on that yet. So I have to ask the question, Elli. Always going to reference back to the Sergio episode because it's still one of my favorite episodes. And it also relates obviously to this one. And Sergio said something that I very much agree with. D&D as a system, just as a system, we don't take into account GM and players, we only take the system, is not suited that well for horror.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that, Elli? Because you talked about Curse of Strahd, and Curse of Strahd is horror and it's D&D. How do you deal with D&D 5e not being suited for horror and still make it horror?
So first of all, I agree with that statement. D&D is a system that it plays on giving a power fantasy. Like, it delivers a power fantasy for players. That's what D&D is all about. And it's fun. But so horror has nuances, right? So there's a whole lot of tools you can use to create horror, even with strong and capable characters in them. First and foremost, which Curse of Strahd already does for you, is create an environment in which they don't have the power that they are used to, and create an environment which they cannot escape from very easily. So first thing in the module, it says that magic works different in the realm of Strahd. It is impaired. Yeah, you cannot use it as normally. For instance, like the scrying spell works differently, I'm pretty sure. You cannot scry outside of his realm. You don't know what's going on outside. You're cut off. Then taking a little bit of player autonomy by making them not able to leave. They are basically... they are in a trap. They are trapped in that valley. And if they want to leave, if they want to deal with their personal things, with their lives outside of that valley, they will have to find a way, fight the things that are keeping them captive. And I feel like captivity is like a big point of horror, because people usually like freedom. And if it's taken away, it takes a toll on players and characters, because it has, like, in Barovia, you have like an always impending vibe of doom and threats and terror. Another thing you can always do, which I don't always use because I like DMing for bigger groups, but you can just smaller the player group, because there's always strength in numbers. The less players you have, like technically speaking, the less problems your monsters will have with action economy, because it's very easy to have like one monster and have your players just whack it. There we are again with D&D and the power fantasy, right? You have like this big dragon and the players whack it until it dies. And it will, like, the bigger the group, the harder the action economy will turn onto the dragon, or onto any other monster for that. So if you are worried about, my players will just, destroy anything I have for them, then just lower the player group, make it smaller, because there is strength in numbers. And then what many people don't think about in Curse of Strahd is that it is not first and foremost combat campaign, really. It has a lot of different aspects to it that have their horror theme without introducing too many monsters, which is the thing I find so very interesting about the system, right? You have your good share of political intrigue that you can deal with in a city that is so under the influence of its environment that it gives you a sense of dread just to be there. And as a game master, you can also kind of play around with the vibes there. Do you want to have like a very happy vibe that just stands in such a bad contrast to the world around you that your players just get the ick that something is wrong here and have the will to look for what is wrong, right? It's just very, very fun to do. And you have like a whole lot of situations in the campaign that are like that. If they're like, the written combat in the module as it is brutal. Like, if you send the players in the way the book suggests, I can think on the top of my head at least about 3 TPK encounters if you do it wrong. So the campaign, the module already takes into account that D&D plays into a power fantasy and taking away that power from the players, which I personally don't think is the best approach, because the players will get beaten down in Barovia several times. The module is just there to make them realize that they cannot always be the hero. So what I prefer to do is introduce the option to have combat. They don't have to take it, but there's the option. For me, in 99% of the cases, they will have an option that is not combat. They can, try to talk their ways out of it, try to bribe people out of it, just try to gather allies, or at least avoid getting slaughtered like pigs. Even if you play the module rules as written, you cannot go wrong there really, because the module already took into account that players usually just try to loot.
I mean, you can only go so far from the game system you were designed for anyway.
Exactly.
Because at some point you also will just have a mismatch between the system and what happens in your campaign. And let's face it, when you invite your players to play D&D, at least when someone invites me to play D&D, I expect not necessarily there to be the power fantasy of, I am always the hero, but the power fantasy of, I have very cool tools at my disposal that I can try to use.
Exactly.
Like when I'm thinking about the Doom to Repeat campaign Sergio ran, and where he had one zombie scare a group of 7 players. You would never have that in a D&D game, first of all.
No.
Because even the level 1 party with 7 players is gonna kill that thing in one round. But in the Delta Green system, the zombies basically just don't take damage.
Oh, that's terrifying.
And the tools the players had at their disposal were one shotgun. The rest had to run away anyway. So they had way less tools, and the monster was way scarier. But when I play D&D, I still want those tools. I don't want you to take my tools away. Because when you do that, like, sure, it could be fun for a one-time thing of I am getting captured, now I don't have a sword or shield or whatever or armor with me, and I'm pretty much nerfed to the ground. But normally, you don't want to disempower your players.
Exactly.
You want to challenge them where the players feel comfortable so you can actually have that horror. Because otherwise the horror is just evoked by the characters being weak. And you don't necessarily want that.
I personally don't. On the other hand, there are a lot of tools that are offered by the module itself to give players the option to win from time to time. What is important to note about Strahd is that it's an open module. It's not like many other campaigns where you have like basically like a timeline that just goes by, but it's an open world. Like not an open world, an open valley. The players can roam.
I mean, an open world doesn't have to mean that you can explore an infinite amount of space, right? It's just you are allowed to choose where you go because there is no impending timer necessarily.
Basically, there are events happening at the same time in Barovia at any given time. Yeah. And the players can prioritize things differently. What I think the campaign does a wonderful job on is letting the players have their powers and their autonomy to choose their priority, but showing them the consequences of choosing wrong or prioritizing wrong. I mean, that's not objectively wrong, but, players will rate different consequences differently, right? For instance, if they leave a village in political distress behind and they return to see the former rulers executed, they might feel terror when they see, like, I don't know, for instance, there is, I don't want to spoil it, so maybe put a spoiler warning here, big spoiler warning alarm. When they walk to the vineyard and they don't take care of whatever problems the people at the vineyard had, they might find it destroyed as well. And they might say, oh, okay, I don't like that the people got executed, but will it have a big impact on the people here, or will not having like any source of, getting drunk to take away your mind from the fact that you are in a valley of independent doom for the whole population, will that be worse after all, right? And there are like a whole lot of these consequences either in the module itself or in very, very popular supplements made by the community for that campaign. And that's just very, very fun to do.
I think that this is a great way to evoke feelings of suspense and horror without taking away too much power, because as Emil and I said multiple times already, TTRPGs are about choices. Basically, you just make choices all the time. Everything you do is just a choice. And showing your players the consequences of the choices they have made is a great way to show what the world itself is and how the world itself should feel. And just making it shown to the players what happens regarding their own actions just makes them think more about what should we do now. They think about their choices a bit more carefully, or might think about their choices a bit more carefully, and therefore create a feeling of tension and suspense by putting basically a timeline or a timer on the decisions that you have to make without really putting a timer on the decisions that you have to make. Because they can take as much time as they want to make the decision, but the longer they wait, the worse the decision becomes or can become, depending on what type of situation you are in as a horror setting.
Exactly. And that way you can give the players a feeling of power because they have the power to choose, but you also make them feel powerless by showing them what the consequences their actions or their non-actions can have, right? If they let that powder keg of political intrigue just, be a powder keg and it explodes because they actively chose not to do something about it. On one side, they have the power to not choose. And on the other hand, they will realize that they chose wrong, right? That they lost in a way. I personally think that's just very, very sweet.
Especially with choices and TTRPGs, as we said, revolving around player choices or player agency, them being able to do stuff, right? Is where the crux of TTRPG horror lies with me. Because if I can't make the choices my players make, the turning point of horror in my games, it's just basically just gonna feel like a normal game night with some added spooky darkness. I turn the lights down in the room by 10% or something and make it darker, and that's the horror I have, right?
Don't make it red though.
If the choices I give my players are where they realize the horror that is around them, where they have to decide between one or two or three lesser evils, which is the lesser evil that you think, or which choice is going to lead us to the light at the end of this darkness, because I think that's important for horror, right? You need to have some kind of light at the end, because a complete grim darkness is never gonna be the place where the horror is, because at some point just contempt sets in. Yeah, this is just how it is. I can't do anything about it. But if you show your players they can do something about it, but they just have to do the right thing at the right time, that's where it's at. That's where you give them the horror, where they at every single point go, shit, the decision has to be right. What do we do here?
And there's no quick save, my guys.
And there's no quick save. You have to make a decision now, make it, and live with it. Because otherwise, I'm either just guiding my players through a horror movie, which
is lame.
Yay, if you want to do that, fine to you, but where's the engagement?
Where's the game?
And second of all, if I give them choices, but all of them basically don't change anything, it's again just the movie. And then also the other option is just turning down the darkness in the room, and basically it's all just vibes and stuff. And that's okay when you just want to have a little bit of horror-y immersion. But you have so much more possibility to go. Why don't you use it?
Yeah. And I think regarding that, all the possibilities that you have or should use to invoke that horror, you need to have some sort of times where it isn't as horrific as it can be, because you need the contrast to make it really felt, in my opinion. Because if there's always tension, always horror, it isn't as horrific anymore as it can be, or as you might want it to be, without these low times. Because then you know, okay, this is usually the normal type of deal, the low tension, the vibe is a bit more spoopy, blah, blah, blah. But then the high tension, high horror situations are where it's really at. And this is not the norm. For our characters, it is, because we are trying to save this valley or whatever, right? But the contrast between the two is, in my opinion, needed to elevate both situations and make it overall more fun while still being horrific time.
A game me and Emil recently played that did a good job, in my opinion, on that was the Modern Prometheus. It basically it's a very open game that you play without a game master, and instead you have two players. And the game basically offers several mini games that just are there to deepen the understanding of these two characters that you're playing. And it gives you prompts that are not always dark and grim, but also lighthearted sometimes. And they give you always the option to be very metaphorical with these prompts that are stated. And when you have like a partner to play this with, that you really vibe with, that you really work good in storytelling with, you go down a spiral, my friend. Like that is going down. Like we had moments of so much tension in that, and we had a good read. I would dare to say we had a rather good read on the room when there was time to ease the tension a little bit. Yeah, just for our mental sake. But I think the game itself did a pretty good job at that.
I remember one moment towards the end where we had a very intense conversation as in character, and then now this is the time for a fun joke, because we are still friends playing a game on a Monday night.
It was a Monday night.
The characters in the game, they might be having the most intense, horror-y, whatever experience they're having, but it doesn't mean that we outside the game can't make fun of what is happening, right? We are still disconnected from what is happening. And I think it is needed in most instances to alleviate the intense feeling that can happen at a table.
Especially in horror.
Because character bleed is a thing that happens. There's a very good episode of Roleplay Chat from Matt with Elli from Dice Drop.
That's on me.
No, Elli with an A and an E at the end.
I was like, I was where?
Elli, and Eli are the three people, by the way.
Jesus Christ.
No, but Elli from Dice Drop, they talked about character bleed and how the lines between you and your character become blurred when playing. You put yourself into your character, and you might take something from your character with you. When your character is feeling emotions, you're feeling emotions. And especially in horror, you need to be aware of that, because as a GM, you are, in my opinion, more disconnected from the game than your players.
Yeah.
Even just a half step away, because you're the one guiding the experience. And I've known people that said, no, as a GM, I'm only just another player. Yeah, you're a player as well, but you have more power. And in horror, that power should be used to make sure that in these intense moments, you'd make sure that there's not that much character bleed happening, so that nothing happens at your tables. And that's why we have safety tools, right? That's why we have session zeros. So you as a GM can make sure that that never happens, so that you have the tools at your disposal. Because otherwise it can go south way too quick.
Yeah. You know about that, but nobody else. So I would real quick. I am starting another strat group, like in person.
Another one.
In person. And most of our players, I would dare to say all of them, are pretty new or completely new to tabletop RPGs and D&D at all. And they were just thinking, oh yeah, we just do it. We just sit down and we play. And they were so overwhelmed with me having having consent sheets, having like a discussion in person with them before we play about what they expect, about what they want, about what they don't want. All these things were like, well, I didn't know like that it was that intense. I'm like, roleplaying can get really intense. There was a time I was sitting with 3 grown men in a Discord crying. Roleplay can get super intense, especially like if you're really, engaged with your characters and your friends' characters, because that's what we all are. At the end of the day, we likely end up or are friends. As friends, we should probably watch out for each other, even if we all agree to play horror because we like horror or not. I don't know, but I do. Exactly. And at the end of the day, you should watch out for your friends, because it's a game and we are all still here to have fun, even if we all agree to get spooked, right?
Yeah.
So that's super important, in my opinion.
Overall, just having a environment where you as a player feel safe just enhances the ability for you as a table to create a good and still fun but horror atmosphere. Because if you feel safe, you're able to just completely immerse yourself, or to the extent that you want. But if you don't feel safe, you aren't able to feel all these emotions that you want to feel when you play a specific type of theme for a campaign or a session or whatever. But in a safe environment where everyone is on the same page and is looking out for each other, that's a possibility for you to do. And that's what we want. We want a safe place where we can all have the fun that we agreed to, being it having horror elements everywhere.
Everywhere, lurking in the shadows.
If someone at the table notices, hey, someone isn't doing as great, hey, maybe we'll need a 5-minute break, or just talk about that. And then break the game, pause to just make sure everyone's still feeling all right. And having that safe space is a big thing, especially in horror.
I recall a session that I DM'd for you two and a few other of our friends. By the way, it was also Curse of Strahd. And I remember, I think it was the 3rd or 2nd session. We are all playing, like most of us are playing with webcams, just because it's easier for me to see if someone feels distraught.
Sorry, can I interject?
Yeah.
Real quick, right?
Yeah.
I think that's very important. I wouldn't feel comfortable as a GM running a horror campaign for people that have no webcams. Like, if one of you has no webcams because of whatever reason, that's fine. But generally, I want to see you. That is not because I feel like that's needed to play a game. It's so I can feel safe enough to know how you're doing. Because how much stuff goes missing if I don't see the face of a person when interpreting tone or mannerisms or whatever is huge. And I think for horror especially, I need to know that what I'm doing right now is okay for you.
Exactly. In that given instance, I remember like I was describing a rather grim scene, like the aftermath of you solving your first mystery. And I remember Sönke was method acting so hard on that camera. I was so worried that I broke immersion. I was like, hey, are you okay? Because I was so worried about him, a friend of ours that you might have heard in another actual play by DoubleDM.
No. At this point, no.
And he was so immersed into his method acting that I grew worried. I broke immersion. And I rarely do that, but that's what webcams are great for, because if I have the mildest concern that somebody is not having fun anymore and is not feeling great, that's the point where we take a break. And I take the time to check on that player, because it is never anyone's intention for someone to feel like garbage on the table. We don't want that.
No. And I think even the people that, right, say, safety tools aren't for me because my group and me are friends and we are grown as men or whatever, especially if that was the thing, right, you're grown as men, you have probably no females at your table, by the way, or any diversity whatsoever, so fuck up anyway. But, right, even those people don't want people to feel bad. They obviously then say, if someone feels bad, just grow a pair and deal with it, which is the wrong way to do it, because these people are having valid feelings. Respect them. And session 0, even if it never actually does something. I've never, as a player, had to pull the X card so far in my games. Never.
I remember I was close once when we were playing as Alice is Missing. I was close once.
I don't know what instance you're talking about necessarily, so...
No. You do, because you told me that you were also very close.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I've never pulled it, but there were parts where we could have been close to it.
Yeah.
That instance just showed me that if I didn't have the option of an X card, this might sound weird, but if I didn't have the option of an X card in that instance, I would have pulled an X card. Right? I would have basically said, okay, this is going too far for me. I need something, right? But since I knew I could just say, hey guys, this is going too far for me, and I knew my friends would understand, I was able to say, okay, this is still okay enough for me that I'm gonna let it go through, because I know my friends are probably all, first of all, feeling the same, that this is borderline, and they are very careful with what they are typing right now. So I knew that I could go further. And even that single instance, never having used it, the option available is so important for horror as a genre, because you need to have the ability to always walk away.
Yeah, to always opt out. And even if there's something that you didn't recall in session 0 or in the consent sheet that you didn't know you had an issue with, the option that you always can say, I now have an issue with that is so valuable, because especially new players, like I will tell them, if at any given point you don't like something, speak up or give me a sign, anything. It is so important, because they might not even know like how to deal with something they don't like. And I'm always thinking like all these people starting new in TTRPGs, coming to a table that has no safety tools. I swear I am always so worried for that. I am mild concerned.
But for real, right? TTRPGs as a medium give you the ability to experience things that you don't have the possibility to experience IRL. Yeah. I cannot fight a dragon, period.
Are you sure? What if they were the T-Rexes?
Even then, right? I can also imagine a horror scenario in a modern world where I'm an agent for a black tie organization or something that has to investigate eldritch horrors and stuff like that. In those situations, when I have a good GM that does their immersion well, I forget that I'm just a person sitting around a table, at least subconsciously, right? I'm still sitting around the table looking at players and the GM and having snacks on the table that I'm eating, but I'm then sitting there and going, okay, zombie, zombie. That's a situation I am very happy to have never had and hopefully never will have IRL. So I don't know how I will react to that. Especially if I'm actually feeling to myself, not, oh yeah, my character is standing in front of a zombie, but I am standing in front of a zombie right now.
And I think having these safety tools just as a safety net gives you the ability to experience or feel these emotions more comfortably, because you know at any given point you can opt out and everyone will be fine with that. So you are able or at least from my experience, if I have the availability of something like an X card or something along those lines, any type of these safety tools, I know that I can just immerse myself into these sort of feelings a bit more than I would usually do when I don't have that, because I know at any given point, just emergency meeting button and it's done.
Yeah.
We just press pause and then calm down if things go too far. But if I don't have that safety net, I will be much, much more careful. You just have, it's like having a real safety net. You're able to try different and new things that you wouldn't normally without the safety net.
Yeah. And let's be real, as a GM, a session 0 not only tells you what you're not allowed to do or where you should be careful, but also where you can actually focus.
Yeah, enthusiastic consent.
That is the thing, where you as a GM can go, okay, cool, I don't need spiders.
Yeah, they are basic.
Who the the fuck needs spiders? But even
Yeah, no, I get it.
everything your players tell you no, you just have to accept as a no. But everything where they say yes, that just goes into the exact different direction. I'm just saying the thing is, right, just a fourth option that basically tells your players, okay, yeah, you're okay with that, but also maybe you're asking for it. Which could be something else we can talk about, but just knowing what direction my players want me to go doesn't mean that it's not a spoiler, right? They're just choosing which way I'm gonna terrify them. At the end, I am gonna terrify them.
Yeah, and we are back at like a player's agency. Like they know we are playing horror, but they have some degree of control in choosing what tools I'm going to use to scare the shit out of them. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it, because if they give me enthusiastic consent on a horror RPG, I'm still playing a story. I'm telling a story with them. Yes, their characters are in a terrible position that the players put them in. They know, have fun, you guys. You will be tormented for months. Let's go. But like in the end of the day, they always have a say in the story we are telling. And it doesn't matter what kind it is. It can be a splatter horror. It can be a whimsical fantasy adventure. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they do have a say in it. And that's what makes it so fun, right?
Yeah.
I recall you were asking me, hey, have you asked your new players what kind of fantasy movies they like? Because usually the answer is Lord of the Rings. And I recall one of them told me like the bridge to Terabithia. Is it
Terabithia?
Yeah, I think it's called like it's such a good movie, and like the answer, I was shocked. I was like, oh my god, that is such a genuine, curious answer that I have never gotten to it. And I was like, oh, I will do something with that. And I was back home, kind of like looking into the movie again, kind of going through some of the themes it had in them, and thinking, how can I implement some of it to make it feel like this uncanny sensation of familiarity for that individual player. Yet another way to immerse them into a story of which they thought they didn't know anything about.
But that's exactly right where I think, for example, right, for horror, we can just say it, immersion is important.
Yeah,
you need to immerse
obviously.
your players. But exactly for that, I think, when you're asking your players explicitly, what are your favorite works in this genre? What are your favorite fantasy books? What are your favorite horror books? What are your favorite horror movies, horror video games, blah, 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 right? Then you can have a look at these things, what they do, and use that familiarity that you then, right? For example, when one of my players says, my favorite horror game is Outlast. I could either watch a playthrough of Outlast or play Outlast myself, make notes on that, on how I can try to evoke the feeling Outlast wants to evoke in my games, giving that player that sense of familiarity, which is just going to immerse them in then the story and scenario I want to tell.
Yeah, exactly. And you also, sprinkle in that uncanny feeling of them going, wait, I think I know this, but I do not know why I know this. Because I can tell you, when I play with them in like 2 to 3 weeks, they will have forgotten anything I have asked them. They would just go, yeah, okay, I have, that consent sheet, and I can say X, and this is my character sheet, let's go. I guarantee you, this is how it's going to go. It's so precious, especially with new players, because they have that expectation, right? And bringing them something they did not expect and mixing it with something they know of the game they are going to play is going to set their expectations for future games. Even if I am not, participating in them or, game mastering for them in the future, I can't tell. But they will have a certain experience with how they were worked with before and how they maybe expect to be worked with again. If I was the one that introduced them to safety tools and all these things, I'm proud of that. That's cool.
I think you just mentioned another really important thing, especially in horror, is for me personally expectation management, because I think your players should know what to expect and what not to expect and be sure of that.
Yeah.
To just feel comfortable overall. I mean, expectation management is important for every TTRPG type or a session or theme or whatever. But I think especially for these more spicy themes, you could say, that isn't just the baseline, yeah, okay, we're just playing a fantasy game, but more of the more deep diving that could be potentially problematic or has the ability to be problematic.
Like subgenres that are kind of widely differentiating from each other?
Yeah, but
specifically
for
horror.
example, horror or anything along those lines.
All right.
I think expectation management is really important, so everyone can know what to expect and what not to expect, and then feel the immersion even more, even though you agreed on the themes. Great. Yeah. You made some familiarity. Great. You can immerse yourself. But I know what to expect and what not to expect through session 0, that I don't have to fear as a player anything, but just as a character. And knowing what to expect in these regards is, in my opinion, one of the most important things to be able to experience horror the way it is meant to be experienced.
Raw.
But to get to basically the last point I wanted to discuss on, we talked a lot about, for example, safety, immersion, choices. So let me ask both of you, just generally, what would your more game master technique focused advice be for people that want to create horror and suspense? What can person that has the handle on the scenario that the players are currently in, what can they do in that moment to make it more horror and suspenseful?
All right. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. It might sound weird, but describe less, and let me specify that. Describe less of the thing itself, but more of the impact the thing has on the world around you or around your players. Because everything else, or how the monster looks, isn't necessarily important. But what the monster does and how it affects the environment might be more important. And let your players fill in the blanks for themselves. Because whatever this creature or thing or whatever can do, or how it is affecting the environment around them, your players will have a vision of that or a picture of that in their own head that fits perfectly, especially only for them. If you force your own vision onto them, it might lose immersion. But through effects on the environment, you can immerse them even more and create that suspense feeling. Describe the wake of a monster, not the monster itself. That would be my advice.
I think personally, I would go into the opposite direction pretty much. I would use extremely abstract metaphorical descriptions for things. Like descriptions you don't expect concerning what you're describing. For example, the scream like broken glass. It is not a metaphor you often hear. And usually you take a minute to think about it. It's like, what would it be like? If I'm describing a banshee, for instance, I would say, just using words that aren't commonly used to refer to a banshee, for example, right? I wouldn't go with like spectral and, translucent, but maybe like shimmering like the moon, softly elegant, taking away the horror to put it somewhere else. Because in the Banshee's case, it's not, it's not the specter that's scary itself, right? It's a ghost. But what's the worst thing about a Banshee? It's the scream, right? Take away from the visual horror of that monster and you put it into what's really dangerous about it.
You're focusing them. You're focusing on what matters. And I think that's exactly also what Niels meant, however, right? The monster itself, how it looks, what it is completely irrelevant. But the impact it has, the scream a banshee has, is where its horror lies. Psychic powers a mind flayer has, that's where its power lies. Not with the tentacle mouth.
Who gives a frick about the tentacle mouth?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about its abilities, what it does.
I think it's especially because when you're creating horror, I always think of the first Alien movie.
Right.
Have you both watched it?
Yeah.
I am familiar with it. I have not watched it, but I am familiar with it.
Okay, because the xenomorph, the monster of that,
I am very aware.
Okay, yeah, we have a resident monster fucker with us.
I will not deny. I will not take positions on that.
In the first Alien movie, first Alien movie is, I think, 90 or 100 minutes long. You do not see the monster until minute 75. You do not see the monster. You only see what it does. You see its impact. You would not have to see the monster one time in the movie to know that it's dangerous. And I think that's exactly what you as the GM are able to do, because you control the scene. You control also the senses of your player characters. You're what they see. You're what they hear. You're what they smell. So focus them on what is important, but not necessarily with giving them all the information. Yeah. You see that, for example, I don't know, you have a monster that is big and strong. Okay, cool. We don't need to think about how the monster looks or anything. You just need to get your players to a point where you can show them explicitly that this thing is strong. You focus them on the impact this thing has. It is strong. By showing, I don't know, a security door completely broken to shreds. And then, obviously, you can describe more with how Elli, for example, said it. Okay, this monster isn't just strong. It has, for example, claws, but it has some kind of twisted kind of claws. And then you can go into describing how the claw marks don't make sense and how they're kind of weird, kind of different. And then you can always go further on that. And you can, the next scene, you focus on something else and blah, 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 and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I suppose we all have like the same advice, is basically to tell, to show and not tell, but all in very different approaches to that end goal, which I think is fun. I don't know if I can add that last tool, which I think always, makes the cake at the end of the day. I always use music of different kinds of games that already are like in the fantasy horror spectrum, or just general themes that would align with with the vibe that I'm trying to deliver. And I have playlists, long playlists for all kinds of scenarios in my horror games. And it usually just, adds to the atmosphere. That's something I always do. I suppose many people do it. If it's done correctly, it adds so much to it.
Completely agree. Music is amazing. And we had an episode about that with Eli.
Also with Mayday Roleplay.
With
Eli.
Exactly. So if you want to know more about that, go listen to that. And with that, I don't have anything else to say.
No, I'm just glad you had me. Thanks for letting me be here. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Anytime again.
You are such
Elli,
a sweetheart.
If there is anything you want to shout out, if there is anything you want to say to the people where they can find you or anything, now would be the time to do so.
I am very shy, so I will not do that. The only shout out I have is to all of you and to your horror games. Go wild, have fun.
All right. And with that, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Elli, for being here.
Of course.
Hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you for listening to this episode of DoubleDM. It appears you liked this one. What we had to say and our advice helped you. Why not show us how we helped you in a rating? Or even write a review detailing us how we helped. You can do this on the platform that you are listening on right now. It's just a few clicks, doesn't take long, and helps us out. It gets us out there and our advice into more ears of more people. Thanks again for listening and joining us on this amazing journey. Have a great day and hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Junge, der zieht er erstmal.
Now you've broken him. You've broken him.
Sorry.
I'm not making it any better, but I... She's broken as well.
Nee. Ich hab einen Bauchi-Fauchi, Mann.
I hate you both so much.
I hate myself too. It's okay.
We all hate ourselves. Come on, Nils. You can do it.
What is Elli?
I am Elli, as you have stated multiple times. Wait,
way too loud.
I can fix myself. Maybe.
Good for you.
I can fix myself.
Hurensohn. Ich krieg mein Mikro nicht raus. Warte mal. So, besser?
Jetzt bist du zu leise.
Besser?
Leiser. Also jetzt bist du zu leise. Immer noch lauter.
So. Hallo?
Lauter.
Hallo? Hallo?
Hm? Das.
Ja, gefällt dir das? Magst du das?
Gefällt
Ja, gut.
Ja, gib mir mehr.
Ja, ich gebe dir jetzt mehr so.